to see that his younger sister sent him a message asking if he is eating all by himself again. He goes to the restroom to call her, and he is surprised when she tells him that their dad has found a good part-time job for him that could clear all their debts. She tells him a wealthy family moved in recently, and they are looking for a tutor for their daughter. She adds that the family is ready to pay 5 times the market price. In the next class, the same girl he met earlier appears before everyone, introducing herself as Itsuki, and he is shocked to realize this is the student he will be tutoring.
It was at this moment that he knew he fucked up.
He becomes embarrassed and tries to say hello, but she snubs him too. The next day, during lunch, he tries to make amends for how he treated her the previous day so he won't lose his new job. But he discovers that her table is already full. As he leaves, one of the girls, named Ichika, sitting at the table, walks up to him and asks if he is after Itsuki, but he says no. However, she tells him she will go and help him talk to her. He quickly holds her back and tells her to stay away from his business, but she doesn't mind him and tells him he can always come talk to her anytime. A few moments later, while he thinks about what to do about the girl he will be tutoring, he sees another girl who shows him his exam script that fell off while he walked past their table. Later outside, while he hides, seeking an opportunity to apologize to Itsuki, an ugly girl notices him and confronts him. She threatens to report him for staring at girls, but he begs her not to, also telling her not to tell Itsuki about it. He heads to the new student's residence, and as he tries to make his way into the residential complex, he shockingly meets Nino and the other girl from earlier. Nino accuses him of stalking and tells him to go back home, but he pretends to also be living there. However, the other girl, Mikyu, tells him to stop the cab, reminding him of the poor $1 meal he bought earlier. He becomes embarrassed but quickly runs into the building complex anyway, heading for Itsuki, but misses her as she enters the elevator. He decides to take the staircase to catch up. He soon meets her, and she wonders what he wants, so he refers to the incident of the previous day, but she doesn't want to hear his garbage. She tells him to leave, saying she has a tutor coming soon, but Futaro reveals that he is the tutor she is waiting for, shocking her. She becomes sad, and soon the other girls appear in the walkway, talking about the creepy stalker they met earlier. They are shocked to see him again, and he wonders why they are all here. Itsuki reveals that they all live here, and while he wonders how 5 friends are sharing an apartment, she further reveals that they are quintuplets, shocking him. Later in the apartment, while Futaro prepares for his first tutorial session with them, all of them, except Jatsuba, refuse to turn up for the class, so they both go to the rooms of each of them to gather them for the class, but they all refuse. Some moments later, he gathers 4 of them, except for Nino, but he struggles to make them focus on studying. Ichika offers him some cookies, but he rejects them. She promises to study if he eats them, so he agrees. However, he soon discovers he was drugged, as he later meets himself in a cab in front of his house. He delights, and Itsuki tells him that if his little brain understands the situation, he should know that the girls don't want him. But he insists that he can't stop tutoring them, which makes Itsuki wonder why he is so persistent. Futaro's sister, Raya, appears, and on seeing Itsuki, she invites her to join them for dinner. During the dinner, Itsuki realizes that Futaro is persistent because his family is dead broke and needs the money to settle their debts, so when she later prepares to go home after the dinner, she tells him he can suit himself all he wants with the tutoring. Still, she personally doesn't need his help to pass her exams. This excites him as he reasons that he doesn't need to deal with all the 5 sisters. He only needs to help those failing to graduate successfully. But little did he know that the 5 sisters are identical in every way, including failing horribly at school. The next day, the girls are surprised that he came to tutor them again, even after his first terrible experience. They tell him they don't need a tutor, and he challenges them to prove it to him by passing the test he has prepared for them. He adds that he won't disturb anyone who passes ever again. The 5 sisters agree to this as though they are really smart, but after taking the test and Futaro grading them, they scored 100 combined. They immediately take to their heels, and he starts to chase them. The following day, he starts to struggle with balancing his own studies and tutoring the pain in the asses he got as his students. He gets to school, and as he thinks about this, the 5 girls arrive in an expensive limousine. He tries to talk with them, but they start to run again, and he immediately chases after them, telling them he is harmless. Itsuki tells him that even though they are not intelligent, they will solve their problems by themselves, so he asks them if they have reviewed the test he gave them earlier, which should be an indication of whether they can study on their own or not. But the 5 idiots become speechless. making him realize that these girls are not just dim-witted. They utterly detest studying, and they hate him too. He reasons that he has to gain their trust, and as he checks their test scripts from earlier, he notices that Miku got a particular question correctly, surprising him. He later approaches her during lunch, and as he tries talking to her about the question, Jatsuba interrupts. She excitedly shows him how she effortlessly got all the questions wrong in the homework she did. Ichika tries to take her away so they can leave Futaro and Miku alone together. He tells them the need to study, but Ichika replies that they ought to enjoy their youth more, falling in love and stuff. Futaro snaps at her that would be foolishness and a waste of time, surprising them. Jatsuba tells him she's got no one yet and asks Miku if there is any guy she likes. She becomes embarrassed and leaves, making the others suspect she is in love. Futaro thinks about this, and on getting back to his seat, he sees a letter from Miku asking him to come to the rooftop so she can tell him something she has been meaning to talk about. His mind goes wild as he wonders if she likes him even though they had just met 3 days earlier. He can't keep his cool anymore through the class, but he reasons that this might be a prank. After the class, he heads over to the rooftop, but doesn't meet her. And while he thinks that it was a cheap prank after all, she suddenly appears, shocking him. She initially stalls, being quite embarrassed about what she is about to say. But she finally reveals that she has been wanting to tell him that she knew the answer to one of the questions he asked in the test. He is disappointed, however. He asks why she is just answering now, but she turns to leave, so he quickly attempts to stop her, causing her phone to fall off her grip. As she picks it up, he sees the Takeda crest on her screen, and he is surprised. She becomes embarrassed and tells him not to tell anyone, revealing that she likes Sengoku period warlords and even reads and plays games about them. She feels weird, but Futaro reasons this would be a golden opportunity to get to her, so he consoles her, telling her she is not weird. He then tells her he got a perfect score in the last history exam, amusing her. He tells her to be his student, and he will teach her all she needs to know about warlords. Miku disagrees with his claim that he knows more than her, and she immediately tests him with a question, but he manages to get it correctly. She asks more questions, which he maneuvers his way to give answers to. She finally agrees to learn from him, but as they later head back to class, she tests him with a drink, which he has no clue about its history. She tells him he is just a blabber, and there is nothing to learn from him, damaging his ego. The idiot immediately heads to the library to gather as many books as he can on history to prove to her that he knows more than her. 2 days later, he goes to meet her to challenge her to another quiz, but she suddenly runs off. He begins to chase her, and they both start their competition as they run around the school like idiots, mentioning names of different warlords in history, until they become exhausted. After a while, they get talking and Futaro realizes that Miku is trying to hide the fact that she likes warlords from her sisters. He asks her why, and she reveals that she is the biggest loser of the 5. He begins giving her some motivational crap, but she doesn't give a damn about his motivational bullshit. Later, during the next tutorial session, only Jatsuba shows up, and while he thinks about the mess he is in, Miku suddenly appears and tells him she is ready to participate too, exciting him. In their next meeting, the girls all gather together in the living room, even though not all of them are interested in the class. However, Futaro considers this progress compared to the previous times when he had to chase after them. As he prepares to begin the class, Nino comes around to spite him, but he maintains his cool and invites her to join. However, she snubs him, so he decides to make do with the other 4. But Nino interrupts and reminds each girl of something else they need to attend to. All the other girls leave except Miku, and no matter how Nino tries to persuade her of the need to leave, she refuses. Futaro and Miku begin talking about history, surprising Nino, who wonders when they both got so close. She accuses Miku of having a thing for dull-looking guys, bashing Futaro's ego, and Miku replies that Nino is too concerned about looks, which further destroys Futaro's ugly looks. The 2 girls begin to argue intensely, and while Futaro tries to stop them, his stomach makes some hungry noises. On hearing this, Nino immediately challenges Miku to a cooking battle, shocking Futaro. Nino further gives a condition that if she wins, there will be no studying today, and while Futaro expects Miku to decline, she accepts the challenge. The cooking battle begins, and after a while of mixing ingredients, they finish cooking and present their foods before him to judge which one is better. Meanwhile, Miku is not proud of her cooking skills and fears he won't like her food. However, when he tastes the different meals, he tells the 2 that both are equally good, but Nino doesn't accept this and leaves in anger. Some moments later, Futaro speaks with Mikyu, telling her that he doesn't know why Nino particularly hates him so much. But Mikyu tells him that she doesn't think so, advising that she will come around if he faces her in good faith. He is surprised and asks what he should do, but she tells him not to ask her, as it is his responsibility to figure that out. He soon heads out of the residential complex and suddenly remembers that he forgot his flashcards, but before he can turn back, the door auto-locks. He reaches out to Mikyu through the telecom, and she tells him he can come in to take it as she is currently having her bath. He heads inside and shockingly meets Nino dressed in a sus way in the living room. However, she has terrible eyesight, which counts as almost blind, and doesn't see him. She thinks it's Mikyu, who is there with her, and begins apologizing for what she did in the afternoon. However, all on Futaro's mind is how to get his flashcard and escape without her noticing, or else the little faith in him will be destroyed. She realizes Mikyu is not responding, and thinks it's because she is still angry. The almost blind girl soon comes behind him and starts rubbing her melons on his back as she innocently stretches to pick a book on a shelf. He becomes embarrassed and quickly leaves, surprising Nino, who still thinks Mikyu is angry. She begins throwing tantrums and mistakenly hits the shelf above. The books on the shelf instantly lose balance and fall, heading for Nino's head, but he quickly saves her, putting him in a sus position with her. Then, she realizes it's been a stranger who has been there. Futaro tries to explain. As he does, Itsuki snaps a picture of them in that position, which will now be a statement of debate later. Nino accuses him of sneaking in to see her nakedness, but he declares that this is not true. However, not all the girls believe him except for Mikyu, who tries to defend him. Itsuki soon observes the books around them in the picture, and she speculates that he could have been trying to save her. Nino isn't satisfied with this judgment, and she immediately runs off in anger. Afterward, while Futaro walks home, he surprisingly meets Nino sitting alone outside. As she sees him, she quickly runs for the door, but it closes before she can enter, making Futaro realize she didn't bring her key along when she angrily stepped out. He initially ignores her and leaves, since the arrogant dummy will lash at him if he tries to help anyway. However, he returns to her and tries his motivational bullshit again, but this only makes her hardened, making him realize that if he takes up motivational speaking as a career, he will surely end up broke. Mikyu soon appears and Nino leaves with her, leaving Futaro to sort his stupid ass. Following this, it's a free day and Futaro decides to maximize the day for studying without having to worry about his dummy students. But just as he starts studying, he starts thinking about them again, and he becomes frustrated that he can't get himself not to think about them. Someone rings the doorbell, and he goes over to open it, thinking it's the loan shark, but he is surprised to see it's Itsuki. She tells him she has something to give him and gives him the payment for the 2 days he spent teaching them, which shocks him on realizing it's a huge amount. However, he rejects it, saying though he came to teach them, he couldn't do anything with them, so he can't receive any money from them for the work he didn't do. Itsuki replies that it's not true, that he didn't do anything, as his presence is beginning to change something in the 5 of them, surprising him. But she quickly denies what she just said and tells him she can't take the money back. He then asks his sister, Raya, if she wants anything, and they all head to the arcade. Futaro asks Itsuki why she came along, and she tells him it's because his sister wanted it, shocking him as he tells her she could have been rejected. They waste some precious time at the gaming center, and as they return, Futaro reasons that he has successfully wasted his day instead of reading like he had planned to. However, he decides to use the night to study and tells Itsuki to make her and sisters study this night. On hearing this, the lazy girl immediately turns to leave. He suspects that it's because she hasn't done her homework and starts to chase her, but as they run, Raya calls their attention to the other 4 sisters who have just arrived. Jatsuba, excited to see Raya, approaches her and invites her to join them to go see the fireworks. Futaro immediately objects to this, saying he plans to study that night, but Raya pleads that she would like to see the fireworks. He finally agrees to this, but on the condition that the 5 girls must first complete their homework. After they complete their homework, they excitedly head to the fireworks center, but Futaro is unhappy. Wondering why the hell they are so happy. Well, he is glad that they finished their homework for the first time. The other girls come to him, but Nino is pissed to see him. Meanwhile, Ichika receives a strange call and steps away to pick it up. Jatsuba returns with Raida, who then shows him the gifts Jatsuba got for her. They both begin to hug each other, with Jatsuba suddenly thinking of getting married to Futaro, so she can also be Raida's sister. However, Nino suddenly snaps at Futuro, telling him not to think of anything ridiculous from the crap Jatsuba is saying. Ichika soon returns and tells them to get going, surprising Futuro, who wonders where else they are going. She replies that Nino rented out the rooftop so they can get the best view of the fireworks, shocking him as it reminds him of how much of a broke loser he is. As they head to the rooftop, they all separate to attend to different things, leaving Miku and Futuro alone. He asks her why this even excites them, as it's not the first time fireworks festivals are being held. She replies that fireworks were a big part of the memories they shared with their mom. They went to see it every year while she was alive, and even after she passed on to Nirvana. After a while, the commencement of the fireworks is announced, and Nino suddenly realizes that everyone has separated. The crowd begins to push against her, causing her to almost trip, but Futuro quickly grabs her and tells her to hold on to him. She takes him to the rooftop, hoping that others would already be there, but they don't meet anyone. Then she realizes that she is actually the only one who knows this location. They watch the fireworks for some time, and Futuro begins talking about its history, which she doesn't give a shit about. She tells him watching this with him is utterly boring, and he calls her stupid as it is her fault the others are not here. She receives a call from Jatsuba, who tells her she is at the clock tower with Raya. Futuro tries to call others, but his low-budget phone embarrasses him. They soon see Ichika from there, and Futuro decides to go get the sisters as he remembers that this is very important to them. He goes to meet Ichika, but as he attempts to grab her, an ugly mustachioed idiot stops him, asking what relationship he has with the girl, and before Futuro could say Jack Robinson, they were gone. While he wonders where they went, Miku appears, and he tells her they should go and look for Ichika, but she tells him that she is injured, so he offers to give her a lift on his back. However, he soon drops her as she is too heavy for his weak hands. He soon dresses the wound for her, and they get talking. He tells her about seeing Ichika with one ugly loser, which he finds very suspicious, and Miku tells him she has also once seen her alighting from his car. They soon stand up to look for others, with Futuro holding her hand. Some reporters, not minding their business as usual, ask them what their relationship is, and Futuro replies that they are just acquaintances, somewhat annoying Miku. They see Itsuki, and he goes to call her. While heading back to where Miku is, he asks her what the relationship between them is. She finds his question ridiculous, and tells him they are complete strangers at the very most, shocking him. He soon sees Ichika, who draws him away to a sus place to tell him not to her sisters what happened, and also reveals that she won't be watching the fireworks with them as she got called for an urgent job. She attempts to leave, and he quickly stops to ask what the matter is, but she tells him to remain just being the tutor that he is and not to poke his shitty nose into their businesses. She steps out but suddenly sees the ugly mustachioed man from afar, scaring her. She quickly returns to Futuro, who then observes it's the same guy from earlier. The guy starts approaching, and she quickly hugs Futuro to prevent being caught. The man soon sees them hugging, but he is not concerned about some random lovebirds who don't have something profitable to do with their time. However, he sits there, shocking Futuro, who starts to wonder how long he has to hug her. Ichika feels they are doing something only lovers do, even though they are just friends. He is surprised she called him a friend and tells her he is just a teacher for hire, and they would never have met if not for this. She feels hurt that he doesn't see her as a friend, and he suddenly realizes that Miku was hurt earlier when he regarded them as acquaintances. They hear the man talking over the phone, and she hides again. Suddenly, the man declares he's found her, shocking them as they later realize he found Miku, thinking she is the one. They immediately follow after them. Miku tries to tell the man he's got the wrong person as he hurriedly draws her away, but he doesn't listen. She manages to remove her hand from his grip but falls into Futuro's arms instead. The man asks about his relationship with her, and he replies that he is the girl's partner and wants them back. The confused man tells him he is their precious young actress, shocking Futuro, who realizes this is what Ichika was hiding. The man soon sees Ichika and becomes more confused as he wonders if there are two Ichikas. He eventually discovers that they are quintuplets and becomes even more confused. He takes the real Ichika away and Futuro follows after them. He soon sees Ichika standing alone and asks her why she is going with the ugly man. She soon reveals that she was recruited by her boss 6 months ago, and ever since then, she has been playing minor roles every now and then. She recently got the news of an audition for a significant role in a blockbuster movie. She further tells him that she might finally be making her official debut, and then asks him to rehearse the script with her. As they do this, the mustachioed man arrives to get her, and she immediately prepares to leave, but Futaro calls her back and tells her she looks ugly wearing a fake smile. He says that he is pissed with the fact that she always smiles to hide her true feelings. He then lists his family problems and explains that he is doing the tutoring job because of that, but he feels terrible that he cannot do anything for them. Ichika tells him that after getting the job, she finally thought she could stand tall as the eldest among her 4 sisters, so she decided not to tell them about this until she made it. She adds that she won't be able to face them again if she bombs this opportunity, and as she later leaves, he tells her he will join her when she apologizes to her sisters. After she leaves for the audition, he calls Rhea immediately and begins to plan something with all the other 4 sisters. Ichika goes for her audition, and she amuses the judges as she performs her role perfectly. After she returns, she realizes Futaro had been waiting for her, and as he sees her, he immediately takes her away to meet the other girls. While she thinks that her sisters will be very angry with her, she shockingly meets them preparing for their own fireworks, apparently what Futaro was planning earlier, and she becomes excited. She apologizes to them, and they all apologize in return for their faults before launching their low-budget fireworks. The next day, Ichika meets Futaro and tells him how excited her sisters were when she finally told them about her work. Later in class, an ugly teacher informs them about the upcoming midterm exams, and he advises them to prepare as much as possible as any score below 30 is a failure. On hearing this, Futaro thinks it's time, and he heads over to meet Itsuki, who has been proving stubborn by studying alone and not with others. He compliments her that she is the most studious of the quints, but it's just that she is also the most stupid. He tells her to come join the study group so she can improve her shitty grades, but she refuses and goes to ask the teacher for help instead. He refuses to give up and meets Nino, but she snubs him. He quickly catches up with her again and starts talking sus, so she slaps his face. After this, 3 of the quints gather at the library for the tutorial session, and he motivates them to study hard for the upcoming midterm exam. After the study, they set out to go home, and on their way, Futaro reasons that studying after school isn't enough to make all these dummies pass their exams, and he wonders how much they can cram in during the weekend. Ichika tells him to go easy on them, and suggests that they could be more motivated to study if he gives them a reward, but he is too broke to add that to his strategy. He separates from them and goes his way. However, as he walks home, Itsuki quickly runs to meet him and tells him that her father would like to speak with him. She gives him the phone, and all her father does is threaten his ugly ass that he will have to resign if any of his daughters fail their midterms, scaring him. He immediately gets hostile toward Itsuki, rebuking her for failing her quiz earlier that day. She gets angry and tells him she doesn't need his help to pass her exam. As she leaves, he follows her, telling her to stop being an idiot, even making her angrier. He explains that her stubbornness will only make him lose his job, and she picks an offense in that, as she tells him he is only doing this for the money. They both get furious, and she tells him she will never have him teach her, even if it means her expulsion. Futaro also, in his arrogance, not minding the fact that he is still a brokey, replies that he is never going to teach such an idiot. Following this, while he plays Monopoly with the other girls, he thinks about what happened the previous day and regrets talking to Itsuki like that. As they continue playing, he realizes he is also poor in a game, just as he is in reality. He gets angry and immediately tells the girls to stop the game and return to studying, even though they have been studying since morning. Miku wonders if they are so dumb that he is desperate to teach them. Nino soon appears and attempts to chase him home, but Ichika finds a way to make him stay over the night, as she notices he has something to tell Itsuki. Later, while he bathes, Nino comes behind the door, pretending to be Itsuki, and tells him Ichika sent her to him. He apologizes for what happened the previous day and tells her it was because her father had threatened to fire him if any of them failed. Nino badges in. He realizes that he divulged the information to the wrong girl, who wouldn't mind failing just to see him fired. He soon finishes bathing and goes to meet the girls so they can continue studying. He tells them to ask him any questions, and Miku suddenly asks him what kind of girls he likes. He deceitfully reveals his younger sister's qualities.
FBI, open up!
After which he tells them that dating is bullshit. Itsuki later comes to get Miku's headphones, acting all moody, and after she leaves, Ichika calls Futaro out to privately talk with him about Itsuki. She tells him Itsuki is stubborn and has a problem being upfront with her feelings. She adds that she is probably feeling hurt alone right now. She tells him she will do her best to get her around, but he also has a role to play in dealing with her. After this, they both head inside. He gets to sleep on a bed for the first time in his broke life, and later that night, Miku leaves her room to come join him on his bed. Waking up the following day, he shockingly sees Miku sleeping beside him. He wonders who this is as he can't differentiate the girls from one another, but he thinks this must be Miku. He then reasons that no one must see him like this, so he sneaks out of the room but shockingly meets Itsuki at the doorstep. However, she also looks like Miku, and he becomes confused. He sees her pajamas and immediately realizes she is Itsuki. She tries telling him about her decision to get along with him, but he quickly cuts her and shuts the door when he realizes Miku has woken up. Itsuki misunderstands this and leaves angrily. He later returns outside, and Ichika asks if he has seen Miku, but he lies that she should be in the library. They head to the library, and while they look for Miku, Futaro thinks about his clash with Itsuki. He then asks Yatsuba what she would do if one of them happens to fail, and she replies that she will redo her second year with that person, surprising him. He immediately runs out of the library and heads back home to meet Itsuki. He finds the lazy idiot sleeping and begins to rebuke her for not studying hard, pretending he thinks it is Miku. He continues to pretend he is mistaking her for Miku and tells her he bets Itsuki is busy studying in her room and not dozing off at her desk like a dummy. She becomes embarrassed and they soon start studying together, with Nino jealously watching from upstairs. Following this, the girls show him that they got perfect scores in all their midterms, and he becomes excited, but he wakes up and is disappointed as he realizes it was a dream. It's exam day. Itsuki also wakes up, and while they think they are still on time, Futaro suddenly realizes that the wall clock is broken. They immediately rush to school, but they are late, and the guidance teacher is already by the entrance to punish the latecomers. Futaro remembers that Yotsuba is already in school, so he devises a plan to fool the guidance teacher. The four girls were dressed like Yotsuba and manage to pass through the stupid guidance teacher without getting caught. Futaro decides to follow suit, hoping the stupid teacher won't figure out it's him also, but the teacher catches him and takes him to the guidance office to discipline him. In contrast, the other girls head to the class for the exam. The exam begins, and the five girls don't seem to know what they are doing. Meanwhile, Futaro is optimistic about their performance. Some days later, the midterm results are released, and the five girls manage to pass only one subject, each passing a different subject from the other, disappointing Futaro, who reasons that he expected too much from five stupid identical sisters. The girl's father calls in and Futaro picks it up, ready to face the consequences. The father asks him about his girl's results, and he immediately suggests that he find another tutor for them. Nino quickly snatches the phone from him before he continues to spit trash, and tells her father that the five of them combined managed to avoid failing in any of the subjects, shocking Futaro. The call ends with the father thinking that his stupid daughters actually passed the five subjects, saving Futaro's ass from getting fired and giving the girls another chance to prove themselves in the next exams. Following this, Futaro spends some time with his family, and he complains about how the five girls failed even though they had studied a lot. His father tells him not to worry too much about them as they will eventually change and come around. He tells him he was also never a study freak before but was a wild guy until he met a girl who changed him. Reita is surprised to hear this, and his father suddenly snatches his handbook to show her the picture of Futaro's younger self, embarrassing him. Afterward, he goes to the girl's home, and Miku makes him some croquette, asking for his review on her cooking. He tells her they taste good, but Yotsuba brutally reveals it is trash. Miku then decides to continue making them until they taste perfect. Futaro soon develops a stomach upset after eating so many croquettes in the bid for Miku to make the perfect ones. He blames Yotsuba for complaining so much about Miku's cooking, which made her continue to feed them with terrible meals. Nino and Itsuki appear on their way out for lunch, and as they head for the door, Futaro tells Yotsuba to find a way to make them stay so they can study. She immediately goes to stop them, telling them that Futaro is gravely ill and needs their care, but the two girls don't give a shit about him. They continue heading outside and Futaro has to get their attention by using ketchup to pretend he is coughing blood. Itsuki comes to him while Nino goes to prepare some food, even though it was overeating that made him like that. Nino soon returns with a cup of porridge, but as she approaches, she steps on the ketchup container and slips, throwing the porridge on him. He quickly reacts to the burn by jumping off the ground, surprising Nino and Itsuki as they realize there was nothing wrong with him. The two girls leave him, and he sadly tells Jatsuba they have returned to how things were before the exams. Jatsuba tells him otherwise, saying her sisters have actually changed ever since they met him. She then asks him if he knows why she has always been standing by him. He wonders why, and she tells him it's because she likes him. She then places her melons over his face, embarrassing him, but she immediately tells him she is just kidding. The next day, Jatsuba comes to meet him and Mikyu in the library to tell him about the upcoming camp. He tells her he isn't interested in the camp and is only being forced to participate. Moreover, she tells him he might want to look forward to the legend about the campfire dance on the last day, which states that any pairs dancing when it ends are destined to be together forever. But he calls her an idiot for thinking that was true. Ichika arrives but soon leaves because she has a shoot. But before she leaves, she asks for Futero's email, and as she steps out of the library, she sends a text, threatening to spread a weird picture of him around if he doesn't get the emails of the other girls. He immediately requests the girls' emails, except for Nino, who doesn't have her phone. However, she gets his handbook to write her email. Meanwhile, Futero realizes that Jatsuba received a call from the basketball club, and as she leaves, he tails her, entirely forgetting his handbook with Nino. He soon sees her entering the basketball changing room, and while he thinks she is doing this to avoid studying, he shockingly hears her declining the offer to join the basketball club. She tells them she has another engagement after school, referring to the tutorial session with Futero. He becomes speechless, but acts cool before her when she sees him. Later that night, while he goes through the emails he got, he realizes that Nino's own isn't there and suddenly remembers he didn't collect his handbook from her. He heads there first thing the next day to get his handbook, but she tells him he has to help her pierce her ears if he wants to get it. However, he deceives her and tries to take the handbook, only for it to drop and reveal the very picture he was trying to hide. On seeing this, she picks it up surprised, but doesn't recognize it's him. She admires the boy in the picture and asks who it is, to which he lies that it's his relative. She then goes to pick up her and her sister's photo albums, also to show him how they looked when they were young. But Futero doesn't care because they are ugly, so she calls him a dickhead and leaves to show her sisters instead. Futero is relieved that she didn't see the real picture he is hiding, that of his first love. He hopes to meet her again as he looks at her picture, but little does he know that the girl is one of the 5 sisters. He could have realized if only he looked at the picture Nino was trying to show him. Following this, Futero meets Mikyu and Jatsuba, who is pumped up about the upcoming camp starting the next day, but he still thinks this is all crap. Ichika soon appears, and as he suggests they go and study, she tells him she has a shoot, but before she leaves, she gives Mikyu her wig, telling her to disguise as her in a class meeting she is supposed to have. Mikyu takes this wig and goes to change, and Futero follows behind like a jobless detective, wondering what she plans to do. He suddenly discovers she's perfectly transformed into Ichika. She heads to the class for the meeting but sees an ugly dude there who had tricked her into coming under the pretense of a meeting so he can confess his love to her and invite her to dance with him. But Mikyu, now Ichika, tells him to give her some time to think about it. He tells her he wants an answer now and soon realizes that her attitude is different from the usual Ichika he knows. He almost discovers the truth, but Futaro quickly bumps in to save her. The dude gets angry and threatens to punch him, but Ichika quickly holds him and tells the guy she has chosen to dance with Futaro already. He is surprised and objects that Futaro is ugly too, but she replies she wants this kind of ugly. She tells Futaro that they should get going, and as they leave, the nasty guy, still doubting, dares them to hold each other's hands to prove they are in love. Following this, Futaro and the girls go shopping in preparation for the camp, and after they return, Futaro is surprised they pay for his clothing. Nino tells him they decided to help his broke ass because they don't want him dressing like a homeless orphan while with them. He receives a notification and discovers his dad has been trying to reach him. He immediately rushes home to take care of Raya after learning that she is sick. He stays with her till the next morning and waits behind, even when the school bus taking them to the camp is preparing to leave. His father arrives and urges him to go to the school camp in the hopes that he can still make it, but he replies that he will stay at home studying. He says he never really wanted to go before, after all. Itsuki soon appears and draws him out of the house, and he is surprised when he sees that the girls brought a car to take them. They set out on the journey, and throughout the rest of that day, Futaro is unusually pumped about the whole school camp thing, making the girls wonder what's wrong. They sleep together that night, and the next day, Ichiko wakes up to see Futaro still sleeping. She bends over to admire him, and Itsuki enters the room just at that moment to see them in this sus position, embarrassing her. Later on the bus, Itsuki feels embarrassed, still thinking of what she saw earlier. However, she decides to take advantage of the camp to express her feelings to Futaro. Meanwhile, Ichika receives an email from her ugly manager, who tells her she might want to consider taking time off school so she can focus on her acting work. The camping begins, and on the first night, Futaro and Jotsuba partner to scare the different groups in the test of courage practice. Ichika and Miku appear next, but they aren't scared since they already knew he would be doing this. He warns the two girls of the dangerous cliff and tells them to make sure to follow the signs, but Miku acts cold and leaves as she is jealous of his closeness with Ichika. So Ichika quickly follows after. Itsuki and Nino appear, and Itsuki is scared of the forest, having heard the rumor that the forest is haunted. Futaro scares them with his Halloween mask, and Itsuki runs in the wrong direction. Ichika tells Miku she could have stayed longer to speak with Futaro, but she replies that she is weird and then asks Ichika how she feels about him. Meanwhile, Nino is searching for Itsuki, and her phone's flashlight suddenly goes off. She hears strange sounds and becomes scared. She tries to run, but slips and Futaro suddenly appears, but she mistakes him for the boy in the picture she saw in his handbook, thinking it's someone else. Futaro realizes it's because of his wig and becomes confused about whether to tell her the truth. He reasons she might blackmail him if he does, so he decides not to. He quickly tries to leave, but she stops him and tells him to help take her to her sister, shocking him. They start walking together with him, thinking about the mess he is now in. He tries to get her to dislike him, but she does the opposite, frustrating him. She sees a wound on his forehead and places a plaster on it for him. Meanwhile, they suddenly hear some eerie sounds from within the forest, and Futaro runs off like a beta male, leaving her behind. They reach a dead end, and stupid Nino immediately turns in the other direction, thinking it's a way. On seeing this, Futaro quickly runs after her, trying to warn her about the cliff, but she is too far gone. She almost falls off the cliff, but he manages to pull her back and almost falls in her stead. However, Nino quickly grabs the luck charm his sister gave him, preventing him from falling to his death. She tells him to hold her hands, but he gives her his good luck charm instead. Afterward, she tells him about the campfire dance and invites him to dance with her, leaving him speechless as he thinks about his already planned dance with Ichika. Itsuki soon appears, and he immediately goes into hiding before Nino can introduce him to her. Meanwhile, Ichika and Miku continue talking about Futaro, and Ichika tells them to change spots for the dance so Miku can dance with him instead. Later, Nino returns to the camp feeling very happy, and Futaro considers telling her the truth. Following this, he and Ichika help carry logs from the storehouse to the campfire ground in preparation for the campfire night. They discuss for a while with Ichika, giving him some mentorship lessons on how to build his trust with her sisters. He remembers the dance and considers who he would rather dance with between her and Nino. He concludes and asks her to pass on this, but she shockingly begins to shed tears, and he wonders what the hell this is. Some random ugly girls appear in the storehouse, and they quickly hide but do not know that their silly hide-and-seek will result in them being locked in the storehouse. They start thinking of how to get out, and Futaro considers breaking the door, but Ichika stops him, telling him it would trigger the burglar sensor, which might ruin the campfire. They try other methods but to no avail, and Futaro starts drilling a hole with his rod, so he can generate some fire to keep them warm. Meanwhile, the other girls begin looking for them, wondering where they went. Miku remembers her conversation with Ichika a while earlier and immediately runs out in search of them, and Itsuki follows after. Ichika tries engaging Futaro in boring conversations, but he doesn't respond, telling her he needs to focus to keep drilling the hole. She wonders why he didn't ask her why she was crying earlier, and in the bid to get his attention, she suddenly reveals that she will be quitting school, shocking him. She further tells him she's been getting a lot of gigs, so she needs to pause her studies to focus on her acting. Futaro considers this fantastic and doesn't discourage her, but the idiot suddenly realizes this will drop his income by 20%. He soon lights the fire, and she tells him she doesn't mind calling off the campfire dance with him, but on the condition that they will have their dance now around the fire. Futaro is surprised by this and tells her about the legend, shocking her as she never knew. She asks if Miku knows about it, and he replies yes, making her feel terrible for not considering Miku's feelings. She moves closer to the door and mistakenly hits a nearby log, causing it to almost fall on her, but Futuro quickly saves her. The burglar sensor triggers immediately because the door has been damaged and the sprinklers activate, so they attempt to find a way to stop the sensor, but Mikyu and Itsuki suddenly open the door, meeting them in a sus position. This causes a major misunderstanding, and the two had to explain what was happening between them to the teachers Mikyu and Itsuki, but they didn't believe them. While Futuro thinks about his current mess, Jatsuba comes to call in for skiing. Meanwhile, Ichika is sick, and Itsuki attends to her. They both talk about Futuro, and Ichika realizes that Itsuki can't bring herself to stand before him. Afterward, while Jatsuba teaches Futuro skiing, Miku appears but continues acting distant toward him. Ichika suddenly appears too, and they're surprised to see her since she was previously sick. They start skiing, and while Futuro speaks with Ichika, he suddenly realizes that he has not learned how to stop moving. He glides down the slope and hugs a tree. As he returns from giving the tree a bear hug, the plaster Nino gave him the day before falls off, and Nino picks it up by coincidence. Thinking it's her dream guy, she starts to chase him, and he quickly runs off only to see Jatsuba also looking for him. He tries to hide from the two, but Miku quickly draws him into an igloo. Surprised to see her, they start talking, and he asks her how they would escape from there. She suggests that they give Jatsuba a handicap by giving her a load to carry to slow her down to their levels. However, he tells her he wouldn't like that and explains that Jatsuba's athleticism was gotten by her efforts, and he won't want to disregard that. He further puts his motivational skills to use, inspiring the gullible girl listening to him. He soon steps out of the igloo, as though he never asked a question about how they'd escape. Crowd hits forehead, and Mikyu immediately calls Ichika to tell her newly found motivational quote. After this, they all reunite and are surprised they'd not seen Itsuki at all. They wonder if she has gotten lost, and while Nino considers telling the teachers about this, Ichika tries to stop her, telling her it's not much of a big deal yet, but Futuro finds this suspicious. He thinks for a while, trying to figure out where she might be, and suddenly comes up with a discovery as he remembers his interaction with Ichika earlier. He then tells them he knows how to find her, surprising them. He asks Ichika to come along as he goes to look for her. They both board a cable car and start searching for her from the top. However, after a while, he suddenly reveals that he is aware she is disguising herself as Ichika and removes her camouflage, shocking her. She asks him when he knew, and he tells her he just realized that Ichika calls him by his first name, whereas she called him by his last name earlier when he was going to